Hello, learners. We're going to be reading the article The Scoop on Cells. This is from your unit called Structure and Function. Here we go. In 1663, an English scientist named Robert Hooke put his eye to his hand built microscope and saw something for the first time that changed biology forever. While examining a sample of cork from a cork oak tree, he observed tiny enclosed units he called cells. Over the next 200 years, many other scientists made improvements to Hooke's microscope. Anthony van Wijnhoek is one of those scientists. Wijnhoek was the first to discover single-celled life forms while viewing pond water under microscopes. He noticed cells that were moving on his slide and decided to call them animalcules. Leeuwenhoek is also credited with being the first person to use a microscope to view bacteria, which until that point no one knew existed. In 1838, advances in microscope technology allowed German scientist Matthias Schleiden to discover that all plant parts are made of cells. A year later, scientist Theodor Schwann came to the same conclusion about animals. From all these observations, Schleiden and Schwann proposed two ideas about cells. One, all organisms are made of one or more cells. And two, cells are the basic units and structure and function of all living things. In 1855, German scientist Rudolf Virchow added a third idea about cells. 3. All cells come from other existing cells. In other words, cells make other cells. These three principles make up the most important basic idea in modern cell biology called cell theory. What exactly is a cell? Cells are the building blocks of life because they contain all the material and structures needed for survival. Most cells are so small that they can be seen only with the aid of a microscope. Cells come in many different shapes and sizes. All cells have four things in common: a cell membrane, cytoplasm, ribosomes, and genetic material. The cell membrane is a thin, flexible barrier that separates a cell from its environment. It allows materials such as water, food, waste, oxygen, and carbon dioxide to enter or leave the cell. Cytoplasm is a gel-like material inside the cell. The ribosomes produce proteins needed for survival. The genetic material, or DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid, is a molecule that is responsible for all of organisms' traits. There are two basic types of cells: prokaryotic and eukaryotic. Prokaryotic cells do not contain nuclei and have very few specialized internal structures. Eukaryotic cells contain nuclei and have many specialized structures. Prokaryotes are single-celled organisms. These are two types of prokaryotes, uh, archaea and bacteria. Archaea are found in extreme environments where most other things could not survive. Some archaea thrive in harsh temperatures in places like hot springs and ocean rift vents. Other types of archaea can be found in salt lakes, while others make their homes in swamps and marshes. Their unique habitats had led to the nickname extremophiles, which roughly translates to lovers of the extreme. In order to survive in extreme environments, archaea have adapted that bacteria do not. Thousands of species or types of bacteria exist on Earth. Regardless of the species, all prokaryotic cells are usually smaller and simpler than those that make up the eukaryotic organisms. Even though their cells are simple, they carry out all activities of living things, such as growth, reproduction, and responding to their environment. Eukaryotic cells are far more complex than prokaryotic cells. Eukaryotic cells make up the bodies of protists, fungi, plants, and animals. Eukaryotic cells have a nucleus, a large membrane-enclosed structure that contains contains the cell's genetic material. In eukaryotes, the nucleus controls many of the cell's activities. Eukaryotic cells are the hubs of activity. They have specialized structure called organelles that carry out life processes. These parts of the cell help living things respond to the environment, find food, obtain water, dispose of waste, and make more cells. Some eukaryotes, including many protists and some fungi, are composed of only a single eukaryotic cell. In these organisms, a single cell performs all life functions by itself. Other eukaryotes, including plants and animals, are multicellular organisms made of millions of different kinds of cells. Unlike in single-celled organisms, the cells of many-celled organisms do not work alone. Instead, each cell depends on another cell in some way as an organism carries out its functions. This interaction helps the whole organism stay alive. Whether an organism has only one cell or trillions of cells, the very existence of that organism is dependent on the existence of cells. If there are no cells, there is no life. So once again, this is from Structure and Function, and the article is called The Scoop on Cells.